Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr. Andrea and John Taylor-Cummings, recognized authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Welcome to the next in the series of our podcasts. We are delighted to have with us Claire Debruhailing, our wonderful. I was thinking we have this privilege to call so many great people our friends.
Long-time
So
friend.
welcome, Claire. So good to have you with us in the studio today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We're so looking forward to this conversation. But we'd like to give a proper introduction.
We do. So just to let our guests all around the world know who we're speaking with today, and you'll then see the relevance of why we've asked Claire to join us and share some insights that we think can really help relationships develop and improve. So Claire Debruhailing has been Chief Scientific Officer since the 1st of July 2022 at Sandoz. She joined Sandoz in October 2021. Claire leads an organization of over 1,800 associates across 5 major countries globally. She is responsible for Sandoz's global development network, including scientific pipeline execution, development capabilities, infrastructure strategy, and talent management across both small molecules and biosimilars. Claire is a highly experienced industry executive with 35 plus years in drug development and has deep technical knowledge in several therapeutic areas. Since starting her career, she's worked with 4 leading pharmaceutical companies, spanning from innovative pharma to generic pharma. She has a BSc in chemistry and an MSc in pharmaceutical analysis and quality control from the University of the West Indies and the University of London. And she's also achieved at Regent's Theological College, and that bit we didn't know. Claire is a strong advocate of women in leadership in STEM, a champion for inclusion and diversity in her current and previous organizations, and a member of the Women Leaders Association in the UK. She has had the opportunity to write and speak on these topics in different fora. So you can see why we've asked Claire to join us. Lots of wisdom and insight, I'm sure, coming. So we should jump in.
Yes, and there's so many different directions this could take, Claire. So we'll follow your lead.
And I'm hoping we're going to be able to cover perhaps all the aspects of harmony at home, thriving at work, winning at life, but let's see how the conversation goes. So Claire, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about the passion, what drives you, what's gotten you to where you are now, and maybe on that journey where relationships have fitted into that.
So first of all, thanks for inviting me to the podcast. I think that's a really good question. What drives me is I really believe that I want to make a difference in the world. And because I've always been passionate about science, as a child, I was badly asthmatic. And I remember receiving my first meter-dose inhaler to treat the asthma and the difference it made in the quality of my life. I'm one of 6 children. I couldn't play outside with my brothers and sisters because I was inside. I was the sick one in the house. And it really impacted the quality of my life and the quality of my relationship with my siblings. Rather than being a peer and able to play out with them, I frequently was left behind. And once I felt the impact that medication made in my life, it made me determined that I want to do for others what that did for me. And that's
Amazing.
Really led me down a career path of wanting to be in the pharmaceutical industry. And it's ultimately got me to where I am today. And I think it's been about making a difference, wanting to improve the quality of people's lives, and recognizing that being on your own in an illness or through a situation is such a hard place to be, and the importance of relationship and wanting to understand how do you create an environment when you can hold your place in a relationship. An easy example is, again, how do I play with my siblings and overcome this disease condition that's impacting my life?
That the story gives it so much weight and so much context that makes everything else so clear. And I can see how that passion drove you. Tell us what the journey's been like for you, because this whole idea, we're still grappling with how do we get more women coming into STEM and progressing through the ranks to hold, you know, these C-suite type positions, which you've managed to do. What's kind of helped you stay with the journey and taking you to where you are, the dizzying heights that you are now, looking after global teams?
Yeah, I think it has been a journey. You know, I obviously started my scientific journey in the Caribbean, in Trinidad, where I did my first degree. And because I was one of many, I was none other in Trinidad. I think that the whole concern around ethnicity was not an issue. It was around recognizing that as a female, I was as capable as any other male in the university, and I was able to achieve quite good academic success. I came to England on the back of having completed my degree and had an opportunity to work in my first company. And again, I think having the right academic qualifications helped there. Yeah. But what became a challenge then, I think that was where I started to realize that there were challenges around being a woman in STEM and holding my own place. I think that was back in the 80s when if you weren't playing golf and you weren't one of the boys, it was very difficult to progress in an organization. Right. And when I went for my first leadership opportunity, I was told, you have no leadership capability. You will never leave the lab.
Wow.
I had to ask myself then, who do I believe? Do I believe the assessment of somebody who thinks they know me, or do I believe in my own capabilities and the passion that was driving me to want to make a difference in the world? And ultimately, I think navigating and working through how do I find the right space, how do I develop the leadership, and how do I develop the understanding to overcome some of these barriers has been really instrumental in getting me to where I am today. And you're quite right. I think I am sitting now, I'm fortunate at Sandoz that I'm sitting in an organization where over 40% of the executive is female. Over 40% of the board is
That's
female.
That's very different. But so many have grappled, but anyway.
Yeah, and 4 of the pharma companies I've worked in for the last 35 years, this is the first time that I've been in an organization where there's that level of equity between males and females. And I think it's really understanding what are the barriers that are preventing women from, first of all, entering the workplace. I think some of the barriers you face at university where there is discrimination against females as they do the sciences. As you come into the workplace, I think there are also microaggressions and some challenges that you need to face. And I think my ask to employers and myself as a leader is how do we change the landscape to make it a level playing field for women and men, where you are able to progress based on the content of your capabilities rather than your own, makeup, which is out of your control.
Yeah, and you said some really key things there. One is shout out to the Caribbean. Growing up in Jamaica myself, I thank God for the understanding we start with, which is you can do it too. It doesn't matter what color your skin is or the fact that you're a woman, you can achieve, and that's a great mindset. But then you get put into an environment like some places in the UK where you realize you're very different and the assumptions are against you rather than for you. But you said that you realized there's some skills, some kind of training and development that you needed to show that you are as capable as others. And you mentioned microaggressions that you had to work through. Yeah. To just share a little bit of the how, what you faced and how you were able to navigate your way and maybe the relationships that helped that journey.
Yeah, I think in order for me to have succeeded in my career, I've had a lot of coaching and mentoring, both in the professional workplace, but also within the community and context. I mean, my faith is very important to me. And understanding that as part of a community where you get to know who you are, you get to understand what you have inside of you and how to express that. That has been important to me. So, friends who've come alongside. I mean, yourselves, Andre and Jonathan, when we were,
or Joy.
when we were in church together, yes. Really being able to see others and learn from other leaders has been important. So I think, first of all, having role models or people that come alongside you as peers along a career development journey. Having a strong marriage. I mean, my husband and I have been married. This year will be 33 years we've been married. We have 3 children.
Congrats to you guys.
That's been the major relationship in my life, because he's been my rock. I have never taken a position where I've not said to him, honey, what do we do? This opportunity is here. Do we go for it? Do we not go for it? And inevitably he says, I think that's your next steps. Do it. And, really, really having that person with whom you can have the difficult conversations, be vulnerable, be yourself, have a sanctuary where when you come away from the microaggressions at work, you come home and you have a safe space that allows you to heal, develop, think, grow. That has been a really critical relationship for me. And then I think also in the workplace, having people that through networking and working with other departments have been, there've been people who've identified my potential and opened doors for me. So mentors or coaches along the way have been really critical. So I think a career never progresses in isolation. It's always part of a network. There are always relationships around you. And I think, periodically I sit back and think, thank God for those relationships. Because of those relationships, I am where I am today.
Yeah.
Wow. So many things in there, but I wanted to go back to that the relationship you mentioned with Andy, because and the role that you've taken on now, because I'm conscious that in the role that you're in now, that's taken you to a different place and put the relationship under a whole new different kind of challenge, or into a whole new different kind of challenge, because as I understand it, you now work in different parts of the world, or you work away from home. You're now living and working away from home, and your main relationship. Tell us a bit about that. How has that impacted things? How have you managed to keep it together across distance now?
Great question.
Yeah, no, I mean that's been an interesting story actually, because I was approached by a headhunter during COVID. So we were obviously locked down together in the house for quite an extensive period of time, which is the first time, because both Andy and I have always had roles where we've had to travel. So we've never been a Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 couple, not for the last 20 years or so. And because of that, I think we've learned to value the time we have together and invest a lot in each other in the time we have together. And I think it's really being intentional about the relationship and knowing how to bank good times, so that when you're away from each other, those good times take you through the times of separation. So I now live in Switzerland. I'm resident in Switzerland. I have to be there 75% of the time. My husband is here, obviously, working and living in the UK. So we commute. I come home as often as I can. He comes to me as often as I can. But I think it's the fact that we've invested in a marriage over the last 30 years. I've been in the role 2.5 years. 30 years of investment in a relationship has created a strong basis, and really the roots are deep enough so that even now that we are living apart, and we will maybe for the next 5 years until I retire from this role, we were able to do that. And first of all, I think it was getting his buy-in to the situation. We really sat and spoke about, what does it mean for us as a couple? Where are we as a family? Because our children are now grown and left home, so it was the right time to be thinking of something like this. He is well established and stable in his career, and we have such a depth of relationship. Andy and I have been together since we're 19. So we've grown up together. We've been through everything that you can go through. We've had children together. We've moved house together. We've faced so many challenges together. And I think that depth of relationship through time, trust, navigating really stormy seasons and coming through on the other side, it gives you the solidity to be able to manage, working up and living apart from each other.
The words that you used are so powerful, and so it explains why you have the strength of relationship that you do, because you spoke about intentionality with the relationship. You spoke about investing time when you're together. I love the use of the term banking the good times, so that you have that to draw on when the challenges come or when you're apart. And you also previously spoke about making home that sanctuary where you can heal and grow. And, we can see how that's become the anchor, the foundation from which, or the springboard from which you can go out and shine in the world. I don't know if I have a question there. I just thought you said so many powerful things. I wanted to go back to it, to just show, there's always been this home, the relationships at home impact how you turn up to work, and relationships at work impact how you turn up at home. And I think it was only in COVID that that cycle of impact became apparent. How can we, I suppose, in the workplace, pay more attention, or in mentoring people, encourage them to really invest in relationships, because this personal professional divide mentality still exists? What's your kind of suggestions to people that you're mentoring, and how to create this foundation at home that can help them thrive at work?
Yeah, I mean, I do quite a lot of mentoring in my organization. And my approach in mentoring is always, we're not just here to talk about your career, we're here to talk about life. Because unless you bring your whole self to work, you're not giving everything that you can give. So I need to know all of who you are. We need to be able to discuss all of who you are. And we need to be able to understand that relationships at home and relationships at work are very similar. We're dealing with people. And, you know, my approach has always been one of transparency and vulnerability. I think as a mentor, you know, sharing and there's an opportunity for the mentee to learn from the mentor and vice versa. I think I learned so much from my mentees as they learn from me. But really getting them to think about where is their power coming from? What's powering them? What's motivating them? What's their purpose? What's their big why? And once you understand your why, the question becomes how, and then who. And those are the three questions I always ask my mentees. Why are you here? What's your purpose? What do you want to achieve? How and where do you want to take that? And who are your enablers and who are your disenablers? In all contexts, whether it's at home, whether it's at work. And how do you then understand the challenges in those relationships and build the challenges in those relationships? And invariably as well, we always end up having a conversation about conflict and conflict resolution, because I think that's where relationships get put on the test. Yes. You know, when you squeeze an orange, a lemon,
yes,
that's the only time you know the content of the lemon. And I think it's only when you squeeze a relationship that you understand the strength or weaknesses of that relationship. So I always try to understand, where are your areas of conflict, both at home and at work. And sometimes I think it takes time. It takes time as a mentor to get a level of trust where people are able to have that conversation with you openly enough. And I think it's really understanding, how do you build that, first of all, mentee-mentor relationship, to allow that discussion, and how much of yourself do you put into it? Because I think unless you invest yourself into a relationship, you're never going to get out of the relationship what you want.
Yeah. That's so
such wisdom coming there. I was going to ask the question. I mean, I love the analogy you used there, squeezing a lemon to see what comes out, or not squeezing it to see what comes out, but when you squeeze it, you will see what comes out when it's under pressure. I just wanted to see if there are any examples you could share of either lemons that you have seen squeeze you and you've seen some real challenges come out, and if you have any then, or how you then manage to handle those challenges, or any tips that you have on when you're talking to mentees and recommending how they can then deal with some of those challenges that they've seen once lemons have been squeezed around them.
So relationships that have been challenged.
Yeah.
And I think within a work context, one of the most challenging relationships has been around not having clarity around roles and responsibilities, and feeling that you're unable to contribute or get your contribution recognized because there are misaligned expectations. And I think this is where you end up in a situation of conflict, where instead of collaborating, you end up with competition. And the conversation I've had with my most recent mentee actually has been around, sit and talk it out. Really understand. Don't just put yourself in your shoes, put yourself in the other person's shoes, and try to understand, where are they coming from? Because until you put yourself in somebody else's perspective, it's easy to criticize, it's easy to judge, and you need to be in a judgment-free zone. And once you start thinking about, okay, what are the pros and cons for that individual? Where is that individual coming from? And how can I be an enabler rather than a disenabler? That then helps you to understand how to move from a position of conflict and competition to a position of collaboration. And really, again, building a relationship, investing time. Don't just look at we work, so I only have conversations with you on a work basis. Start showing genuine interest in who I am as a person. Because at the end of the day, I'm you know, we are human beings. We're not human doings. And until you
Yes.
get to the being part of a person, that frequently unlocks the doing that they're able to do, because you get to know who they are, you get to understand where they're coming from, you get to understand their values. And frequently you realize, wait a minute, why did we have this problem? We're on the same side, you know?
Exactly. And
I
why
think,
didn't we have this
why didn't we
conversation
have
by
this?
the beginning, you know?
I think sometimes there's an element of fear. We are so afraid to show who we are. We're so afraid to be vulnerable because we're afraid of being hurt. And you know, one of my passions as a leader is, how do I create a psychologically safe environment where people don't have to be hung up about fear and can really bring who they are to work, because there is such beauty in diversity. So much creativity comes out when you put so many different things together. I think it just unlocks so much. And that's been my passion, and where I think I've been able to work with people, and even my own self. I've applied that to myself in my relationships, both at home and at work and in other settings as well, to try to see how do we become whole, individually whole, but collectively strong in the relationships that we're in.
Yeah, that's such a powerful the kind of philosophy about leadership, and it ties in with the direction I hope we're moving in, where it's more compassionate leadership. There's this book I've been reading about awakening compassion in the workplace, and it talks about the energy that gets dissipated because people spend emotional energy being afraid at work, dealing with challenges that don't get respected, or they're not able to talk about the things that are causing them pain physically, emotionally, mentally. So energy gets spent on that, and there's only a little bit left to innovate and create and put in the job. But if we became a safe place where people could be real, where the workplace could help heal some of the hurts, even some of the hurts imposed on the workplace. I want to talk about diversity and inclusion in a moment. That mental and emotional energy for people to be fully present, play full on, innovate, create, do wonderful work together, because more of themselves has been freed up to be full on in the workplace.
I just had a word picture came to me there as you were talking, and as you were talking, Claire, because what I'm seeing is a workplace in which everybody's drinking lemonade. There's definitely lemon juice in there, but there's some sugar in there. The whole thing is sweet. The whole thing works. You can't get rid of the lemon. You won't just be drinking sugar water. That's not going to be very good. But everybody's drinking lemonade. I love it.
Yeah. Well, if we could just and you've alluded to it. You haven't actually said it, but there is so much emotional intelligence you've had to build over the years to be able to create those strong relationships. We always say, your relational intelligence will either promote you or expose you. So I know we're there's so many directions we could go in, but I want to touch on the work that you're doing with women in STEM and diversity and inclusion. Tell us some of what you're doing there, and weave in how you've built your emotional intelligence along the way.
Yeah. So I think I've always, in all of my organizations, been alone. The only single Black female. I go to conferences and I'm it. You go in a room and you're the only one. And over the years, I mean, I've been in industry 35 years now. I've gone through all the different levels, and now I think I'm at the, I'm at the top of my career. And I look around and I don't see others like me.
Wow.
If I do, they're few and far between. I can't think of any other female Black chief scientific officer for leading pharmaceutical companies in the world. And as I have daughters, and I've seen my girls go to school and be challenged around, their own identity. How do they be comfortable in their skin because of who they are? Because they're an other in the school.
Yeah,
I've been an other in the workplace, and I've because of that, one of the things I have done is made myself available to people who come to you as a leader, they come to you and say, how have you got where you've got to? It's so hard. There's so many things that seem to be against us. There are stereotypes, the stereotype of the angry Black woman, the stereotype of the aggressive woman, the stereotype that because women have to take maternity leave, that they're not going to be giving the same amount of attention to their role as men are. And you would think that a lot of that is old and we've moved past that, but we haven't. And, as one of the things I was particularly interested in, and in my bio, you read that I've done my master's in theology. As part of my theology studies, I took a decision to do my dissertation on Black female Christian women understanding and reconciling identity and purpose with the challenges in the workplace. And as part of that, I interviewed 9 women across the STEM field: doctors, psychologists, engineers, technologists, people who are into IT, and people who are in the pharmaceutical industry, to try to understand what challenges they were facing in the workplace. And I was amazed that I thought I was making things up, or I was interpreting what I was experiencing. And as I interviewed these 9 women and started to draw their findings together, I realized, wait a minute, this
There's
isn't
a
me.
pattern.
This is my crazy mind that's making this up. This is actually happening in the workplace. And understanding how do you know who you are? How do you know your purpose? And how do you reconcile your capability, the content of your character, and your beliefs and your faith system, and the relationships that empower you to allow you to progress in the workplace? And to me, that's what really motivated me to be a strong advocate for diversity and equity. And particularly from a STEM point of view as well, because I think even as simple as in school, my daughter, when she was at school, she was told, we'll send you to do combined sciences because we don't think you're bright enough to do the sciences individually.
Oh my gosh.
And we didn't know about that until after she had already started year 5. And I thought, not year 5, year 10. And I thought, oh my goodness, how did we miss that? Even today, I mean, my daughter is 26 years old now. And that's not 50 years ago. That's recently. And these things are still happening. So it's really understanding how do we as a society really think about at the primary and the secondary and the university level and in the workplace, creating that environment where women, and not just women, because I think we look at diversity multidimensionally. There's intersectionality.
Absolutely.
We have to look at the combination of ethnicity and gender. We have to look at the combination of neurodiversity and gender. We have to look at the combination of disability, capability, and gender. And I think we look at things very unidimensionally, and we've put a lot of metrics around. We have to have X% of women on board by that. But then you have no Black male representation, because you're looking at things in a unidimensional role. So pursuing that dissertation and doing that interview work was really critical in educating me to see that this is not a situation that is unique to me. There's a broader context here, and out of that, my passion through my organization and through talking and having interviews and speaking with other people is to make people realize, wait a minute, we have to collectively own this and change it. Otherwise, my daughters and granddaughters are not going to be coming into a level playing field where they can progress and make a valid contribution based on their strength and capability.
Yeah, and we would lose out or have been losing out on so much skill and so much talent because women have been forced to make decisions or to choose rather, career or family, rather than have both. And as you say, it's not that long ago, our goddaughter was telling us she wanted to do dentistry. She actually had a teacher say to her, don't waste your parents' money going that route because you're just going to get married and have kids and not pursue a career. Now she's a flourishing dentist, running multiple practices. So the narrative that exists needs to be changed amongst other things.
And I think just to add something, Andrew, when you look at data, there's data from McKinsey and other organizations that show the most successful companies are the ones that have diversity. Female, male, ethnic diversity, different type of diversity from different backgrounds in leadership and in executive positions, because you're not getting groupthink. You have so many different aspects coming together that help you with better decision making, because you're more representative of the community that you're serving. You understand the needs of your stakeholders a lot better. So it's in businesses' interest to really do this, to truly be diverse.
And it's actually a criteria for one of the criteria for success going forwards, because the marketplace of potential employees are now judging and assessing companies based on their diversity. And it's not just those who might be considered ethnic minorities or traditionally marginalized. Everybody of every skin color, part of the values of the next generation is to be more inclusive. It's like it's in their DNA to be more inclusive. And that's what they're demanding of companies that they will work with and companies that they will buy from. So to be more globally relevant in the products and in the way, the reputation you create, you have to master diversity. But it's not just, as you will umpteen stories to tell us, it's not just about bringing diversity into the organization. It's about creating that culture of inclusion so that diversity can thrive. Otherwise, you just have a revolving door and people leave if you don't understand what it takes to help them thrive in the environment and not be the only always covering and so on.
I mean, certainly from the work that we've done, it seems like there's a lot of fear in the majority, I guess, population that puts the brakes on diversity. Because yes, I think intellectually people get that having a diverse environment brings in the different talents, covers the blind spots that you might have, allows you to be able to develop products that meet the needs of the majority. Yet still, some people push back against it. I'm trying to think of a question in there. I think.
Well, I'd love to jump in with a question because clearly Sando is doing something very right to create the space for you to thrive, to recognize the skills and the value that you're bringing, and to have 40% women. So, what is it that they're doing that others can learn from? How have they gone about creating inclusion, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace?
I think, again, the word intentionality is important because I think, Sandoz was previously part of Novartis. So this work started when they were a combined organization. The company is only separated last October. And there was an intentional decision taken to look at several aspects. Pay equity is one, and they have an epic pledge where every individual in the organization is going to know what they earn and where they are with respect to banding. And benchmarking across industry.
That's big.
Which is huge because, as a woman in industry, I have always known that I don't have visibility of where I sit and I'm doing the same role as others. And you don't have that comparison. And also recognizing that there is an intentional plan at all levels of leadership to have 35 or 40% female leadership at all levels of leadership through the organization. And to really make that happen, there have been changes in their HR processes or people and organization processes, because they call it P&O in Sandoz, where they've looked at how do you have diverse interview panels. So men and women are sitting on the panels. So when you come in, you're able to be heard and be interviewed by somebody that's representing a board range. How do you ensure that you deliberately ensure you have females as part of your candidate pool? How do you intentionally look at what are the non-traditional skills that an individual can bring to a role that can really make the role a success? So I think it's moved away from your traditional thinking of these are the levels of capability that you have, and this is what you need to bring into the role, and really looking at how do we think about how do you grow the individual in the role? And then when you bring the individual in and you've done the job interviews and you've gone through the interview panels with the diverse panel of people, what is your leadership training and how do you have the right coaching and mentoring? And when I came in as a new leader into Sandoz, for the first year that I came in as a new executive, I was given a buddy. There was a very intentional induction program in place to help me with my own leadership development. I've never seen anything like that. I've not experienced that in any of my previous roles. So there's significant investment in your development as an individual to ensure that you're able to come in and understand the organization, perform in your role, but also focus on your own individual development as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I think the fourth thing as well is the values, the values around making sure that it's an environment of collaboration and doing things together. So collaboration, not competition, being as ambitious as our purpose, but being very focused on what our purpose is. So again, what is that big why? And how do you then, through the values and through the culture, create that environment of inclusion that allows people to come in and truly be who they are and bring their best to work and give the best. And because everybody's operating at their best, it creates an environment for excellence.
So Claire, there is so much wisdom and so much more that we could keep talking about. And maybe I think we'll need to have you back for podcast round 2. But for the moment, if you think about all the relationship advice that you've received, things that you've seen working in your relationships at work, at home, in life, what relationship advice would you want to pass on? What would you want to leave the audience and, maybe leave with the audience and pass on to the next generation?
I think for me, it's always been around how do I make people feel? I want to make people to feel the way that I feel. There's an old expression, treat people the way you want to be treated. And because of that, really investing in relationships is important. Understanding who they are as a human being, not what they do, where they're coming from, but who they are as a human being, and really getting to know what makes them tick is important. Taking the time to really listen. We have 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth. It's important to see people. There's an expression, I see you, and because I see you, you matter.
Yeah.
I hear you, and I actively listen beyond the obvious. I'm not just looking at what's in front of me. I'm looking at what are your reactions? What are the things that are exciting you? What are the things that are closing you down? And that's active listening. And then when I speak, how can I elevate you? How can I help you? How can we have a dialogue where when we leave that conversation, we're both enriched because of the discussion we've had, even when it's a difficult topic or something that's tough to talk about? How do we leave mutually benefiting from that conversation? And I think when you invest the time and you invest your own heart into that situation and compassion, I think that's what really builds a relationship. And when people see that and you're prepared to be vulnerable with people, it creates that environment of trust. And out of trust, you're able to build some really deep and strong foundations in relationships, whether it's at work or whether it's at home. And I think the last thing is really having the courage. Having the courage to not be too proud to say, look, I may be wrong here, or help me to understand this better so I can maybe take a different position. So there are several elements, but I think they all come together then to really make that person feel seen, heard, valued. Fundamentally, I think that's what everybody wants in a relationship.
So true.
That's just gold. It's gold in there.
So true.
Really,
and
really
so
powerful stuff. I think the way a lot of people articulate that is around hearing people and 2 ears and 1 mouth. But I think it takes it to an extra level to saying, adding the eyes in there as well. We do have the 2 eyes. Let's recognize that as well. Let's see the people, see where they are. Real gold there.
And, the point you made about having the courage to invest in the relationship, the courage to see beyond the obvious, the courage to want to lift people and not feel threatened by them, but wanting to do things so that everybody comes out better off for it. Amazing. So Claire, thank you so much. It's been a delight to have this conversation. And as I said, maybe we'll have to do a round 2
I hope so.
to get some
So
more of your
wisdom.
gold. But thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
And thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure speaking with you both.
Our pleasure. And I think, as they say in the industry, it's a wrap.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye for now.
Right.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform. to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.